Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
This episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess is brought to you by Hallie's House of Healing in Santa Rosa Beach on the legendary 30A Highway. If you and your family are looking for a place to relax, rejuvenate, and recharge, then think about 30A between Destin and Panama City, where in Santa Rosa Beach you'll find clear ocean, white powdery sand, all kinds of cute local shops and restaurants. And Hallie's House of Healing is less than 1 mile from the beach. With golf cart option available, stay in this 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath that comfortably sleeps 10 by booking now at Airbnb.com, on our website, blendedblessedalwaysamess.com, or reach out to us on our Facebook or Instagram page and book directly there. Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where we are entering into the polar vortex that is hitting a big majority of the United States right now. We're looking at temps tonight, 7 with wind chills -5, -10. Then tomorrow night, -7, -30 wind chill. Not our cup of tea. That's why we bought a house in Florida.
But we are drinking tea.
We are drinking hot tea to stay warm. That is correct.
Here's the only positive of having frigid temperatures this weekend is I don't want to go anywhere. And so we're going to be at home all weekend.
Speak for yourself.
Except for you.
Go watch Carter play a basketball game.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. So lucky her. She's going to be heated blanket, ready to go. See, now, if I could, I would just be, I said this on the radio today. If I could, I would make a big pot of soup and a big pot of chili, and I would camp out on the couch and watch 5 NFL games between Saturday and Sunday. And there are men and some women doing that across the country all weekend.
Yeah, I would watch something else in a different room.
Just saying.
My buddy Brooke Baldwin just came out with a new Netflix show called The Trust.
Okay.
So I might be binging that this weekend, see what that's all about.
Very cool. Well, this week we did think, speaking of, if you want to watch your friend Brooke, who is always good for your soul when the two of you get together, thought about talking about how do we nourish our souls. So as you talk about, your friend Brooke, every time you guys are together, it's good for your soul, makes you happy, it fills you up. It's always good to fill your cup. And we thought just in general, I didn't know you were going to mention that about Brooke and Netflix at all, but we just had already thought in general, this is just a nice segue, that on this episode, we would talk about how do you and are you nourishing your soul currently?
Yeah, that was definitely what was top of mind this week when I was thinking about the topic for our podcast is like, what am I focusing on? That's my word for the year. But I think for me, it's how do you nourish your body? How do you nourish your soul? And that ultimately is what gives you the fuel to keep going in life. And I think part of that has to do with your faith. And that is so extremely challenging in this world that we all live in. And one of I think the hardest things about faith is you're asked to do so many things that don't make sense.
I mean, that's fair, right? To have actual faith, and for us as Christians, that we serve a loving God, even though we don't understand him and things are hard, you're right. Having faith is being asked to just trust and sometimes not get the answer you want for 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. You just don't know.
Another thing that we are asked to do is to build a relationship with God. And building a relationship with him is no different than how you would build a relationship with anybody else. Is you got to talk to him, you pray to him, you focus on him. And the part of that doesn't make sense is that it feels like it's a one-way conversation most of the time. It's really hard to have a relationship when a lot of times you don't get a response back, and it goes back to trusting, but that is also extremely difficult. But those two things are actually not the hardest thing. The hardest thing is to actually move your feet according to his will. And I saw this quote the other day that said, don't ask God to guide your steps if you're not willing to move your feet. And that, to me personally, is like the hardest thing. Is you can try to trust him. It's his plan. You can pray and talk to him and not get a response back. But to actually follow his plan when you're begging for help is, I think, the hardest thing for people to do. It's hard for me to do.
I would say that that's fair because at the end of the day, typically when you ask God for something, he doesn't just give it to you. He sends you down a path to get there. But a lot of times that path is difficult and it's rocky and it's not the path that you and I would have chosen. And it's, okay, where's your faith? You've asked me for it. I am granting it to you, but are you going to follow that path? And it's like that old picture where Jesus is holding the teddy bear and the little girl's like, but I want it. But then behind him, he has this much bigger teddy bear. And that's what faith is like, is okay, I don't like this. I don't like it at all, but I guess I'm going to trust you that it is what you say. And so you have to keep moving your feet and keep moving forward, like you said.
Yeah. And this whole week, I feel like from church on Sunday to just different things that happen throughout the week, I feel like I'm constantly being reminded to trust God even when it's hard. And I know Sunday in church, we sang the song and like just different moments hit you at different times. And just the words of the song just made me cry because it's just such a difficult journey to trust God. Do you want to sing the song?
I was waiting to see if you were going to sing it.
Oh, God, no. Let's see if he still got the chops.
I know the chorus part. I'm worried about the verse part, but like the chorus is, that's why I trust him. That's why I trust him. I sought the Lord and he heard and he answered. I sought the Lord and he heard and he answered. That's why I trust him. That's why I trust in God.
That last part just made me cry when they were singing the words because I think about how incredibly difficult and hard it is to trust a God that allowed my daughter's life to be taken at 20 years old. And he didn't cause it, but he allowed it. And I'm meeting so many other heartbroken mamas that have lost their kids. And, Sydney's another girl that left her family at 19. And Harper's another beautiful girl who at 10 years old went to be with God. And Evan just would have celebrated his 16th birthday. And the list goes on. And, I prayed to God to help Hallie and he answered, just like the song said, but I would have never chosen this. And the other thing that really resonated Sunday during church too is they talked about how God will disrupt your life. And that disruption is there to teach us all lessons. And the lessons that you learn from that will help the next person. And I've always told my kids that, life's a classroom. Like we're here to learn and constantly learn. And I think the number one thing that we're here to learn is learn how to love and learn how to have faith. And, everybody looks at lessons differently and impacts them differently. But I think that's probably the season that we're in is that massive disruption and then trying to figure out how do you continue to trust a God that allowed that to happen.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. The disruption is, as we talk about a lot of times, collateral, right? It's disruption for your mom and dad. It's disruption for all of our kids. It's disruption for us, whether that would be in our marriage, in our home, in our workplace even. Like it disrupts everything. And I do feel like God, for whatever reason, he is using and strengthening us through it. But this isn't something... you'll never, ever, even at 70 years old, it may be at some point revealed to us why this happened. I don't think I could ever say, okay, I get it, God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The pain's too great. The disruption is so great.
You're stronger and you've learned from it.
But yeah, I don't think there's any way to just be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it now, God. No, I don't think so.
You just have to focus on taking those steps forward and trusting his plan and try to make life meaningful that gives hope, that creates love, even when you don't understand it. And I keep going back to that piece right there is the absolute hardest thing to do. And, if you have ever been faced with a tragic event, I really believe that the only way to get through it is to find that deeper meaning in life, which means pausing and reflecting and going deep and really feeling all of it. Some people numb their way through it, and then all you're doing is just storing those feelings and emotions and not trying to work through it. And that's why I feel like moving forward is the hardest step, because you have to feel it all. And
we talked this week. I read something that somebody posted online that, are you part of a herd of cattle or a herd of buffalo? And when the storm comes, if you ever see a herd of cattle, they run from the storm. They're trying to get away from the storm. And that's like numbing your tragedy. And so then when it does finally hit you, you're tired because you've been running from it, and you're running and it's wearing you out. And then you finally succumb to it one way or the other, but you're exhausted. And a lot of times then you don't even have the fight to get through it, or it takes longer. The herd of buffalo, they run into storms. So it seems counterintuitive, but they run into the storm because then they'll get through it faster and to the other side, and they do it together. And it's actually very powerful imagery when you think about it that way. And I said to you when I read it the other day, you did that right away. You have gone through this head on. I went the opposite way. I did try to run from it for a really long time. I don't recommend that strategy either, but those are your options. Go through the pain or numb and run from the pain. Numbing and running, eventually it's going to catch up with you.
Tragedy is too strong and too powerful to wrap your mind around it. Like, you can't process it. And so in order to get through it, like we just mentioned, you have to go deeper than the mind. Like, you have to go deeper means to focus, like laser focus on love, faith, hope, meaning, purpose, and keep wrapping your mind around that. And for me, I feel like it has allowed me to say no to a lot of things. Like, to me, if it's not tied back to love, faith, meaning, purpose, I'm not doing it. And I just had someone this week ask me, like, what are you doing this year that brings you joy? And I seriously had to, that was a hard question. Like, I had to sit there. I'm very
interested by this.
I had to sit there for a minute, and I was didn't have anything to say.
It goes back to what your mom said last week. Like, she can look at a photo of you and she immediately knows, I can too, if it was before Hallie passed or after. We can talk about nourishment for the soul. So I didn't know Angie was going to bring this up. I didn't know this question got asked. It's actually a question that I carry in the back of my mind. But there are some things as a husband you're afraid to say or ask. And the question is, I don't ever see you actually happy or with joy. And if it is, it's such a quick burst. And it's like you immediately go back into the pain. And so it's like.
But here's the way I look at that. Is that's a season that I'm going to be in. And to go deep and feel it all, I would be faking if I felt like everything was joyful. That's not where I'm at in that season, and that means accepting where you are. And I do feel love, and I feel hope, and I find purpose and meaning in life. But the joy part of it, just being completely honest, I would be lying if I said that, oh yeah, I feel that all the time. This is what I'm going to do, and this is going to make me happy. Like, that's not authentic, and that's not real in this season. Do I have hope that I will get there? Yes. I had joyful moments, like when we had the bonfire and when I see the kids living life and all of that stuff, like that makes me feel love. But that's the reality of where I'm at.
So what did you think about this week? Did you come up with anything?
I was like, I said the children's book, honestly, brought me a lot of joy. And that's one thing I'm looking forward to, is putting the second one together. reading to the kids. I've mentioned that before, so they didn't know this about me really, so I was sharing that there was something very profound of seeing these second graders listening to the book, that it made my heart smile of what, but again, that all gets tied back to purpose and meaning. And I also said, one of my joys is to like try to be down at Hallie's house more this year. But, and then there's the no-brainer of spending time with my family. Like that's what makes me feel love and hope and all of that stuff. But there's just, that's okay. I think that was my realization. Like at first I was like, oh God, but then I'm like, no, it's okay to not have anything, because otherwise you're not connecting with and feeling all of your emotions. That's not where I'm at. Do I think I'm going to be here forever? No, I don't think I'm going to be in this season forever, but that's where I'm at. And that reminds me of this other quote I saw too, that said, you can't heal what you don't feel.
Yeah.
And that's my whole point in all of it, is like, people are waiting for me to find joy or wanting me to find that and show it on my face. And then I'm not being real with myself. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And so I think that's part of running into that storm, like the buffalo, is that in order to heal, you have to process everything. And that goes back to having that stronger connection with God, because I don't think you can find purpose and meaning if you don't have that relationship. And then that goes back to trusting when he allowed the tragedy to happen.
No, I think that's fair. And it reminds me, I was reading my devotional this week, and it was the day after you had sent me this topic and these notes. And so I'd reviewed it, and I'm reading my devotional, and this just popped out and stuck at me. And the verse was out of Job. Of course, if you're not a Christian, Job in the Old Testament was a man that followed God, and the devil went to God and said, he only follows you because you give him good things. And so God said, fine, do whatever you want to the man, just don't hurt him physically. You can't lay a hand on him. So the devil took everything from Job to the point where he killed all of his children on the same day. And Job never changed. And so the devotional, a couple of paragraphs that really stuck out to me, it said, remarkably, in the darkness of this pain, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. Instead, in his tears, he trusted in God's providence. In other words, he recognized that God knows what he is doing in every circumstance. God is worthy of our praise, even in the hardest situations. Job knew that his times were in God's hands. Most of us have lived through cries of anguish and pools of tears. We know how hard it can be to acknowledge God's sovereignty and goodness in the middle of the storm. We wonder where he is. In our human response to pain, we're inclined to find statements about God's providence stale or cliche, but they aren't. In fact, with the passing of time or the changing of circumstances, we can look over our shoulders and recognize that there is no tragic situation that God has not sovereignly permitted. He allows all things to pass through his hands, and they do not take him by surprise. So, back to what we said earlier about how hard it is, the trusting factor, but like Job, you have to.
Yeah, man, that's interesting that that's what you read, because at the same time, I had crossed this other example, very similar, that talks about like your pain may crumple you, but it has the power to make others walk. And that God will use every piece of your brokenness when you put it in his hands. He will give you the burden for those who have been broken in those same places. And like right now, it's hard to appreciate the beauty of the hardships and struggles, because we all get very focused on the actual physical and emotional pain inside. But a lot of times that also gives other people inspiration to walk and move forward too. And that's kind of my hope out of this topic too, is that it inspires you as well as a listener, that if you're going through hard times, like you have to lean in and trust God and know that there is purpose, and your story could be the light for someone else. But I think for me, when I focus on trying to take those steps forward, it's important to focus on like, how do you nourish your body and your soul? And I think nourishing your body sometimes is a no-brainer. It's eating healthy, it's exercising. Like I saw this quote the other day and said, if you don't look at food as medicine, then you're going to be taking medicine as your food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
And it's so true because, I mean, eating healthy is a way to nourish your body and puts you in a much better headspace, physical space to take those steps forward. And even, there's a ton of studies around just moving your body and contracting your muscles really helps with stress and depression. And there's a bunch of studies on why they call it hope molecules when you contract your muscles. But I think for this particular topic, I think diving more into like, how do you nourish your soul so that you can take those steps forward? And it's funny because like a couple of the ways we just talked about last week on watching the sunrise or the sunset.
So beautiful.
So beautiful, but like taking the time to get fresh air, morning light, boost your energy, and those simple acts foster a little bit of peace and just humility and appreciation for what God's created, which we all got that when we were in Florida. But another way is to read scripture, which we've both been doing. Chase is now getting into that a little bit too with his new teacher and new religion class that he's in, and finding some peace in some of those. So that's another way to take just a few minutes. I mean, you do it every morning. You're a very routine guy, and you are.
I'm like clockwork.
A little too routine, but
OMG.
No, I appreciate it because I'm not a routine person in the morning, and he's very rigid with, rigid's a strong word, but like you have a very solid routine.
Yeah, and when I don't
you
get it
make
done,
the time to sit down in the morning and read your Bible.
I read two devotionals. My Bible I try to read at night before I go to bed. But I was telling Chase last night, him and I were having a good conversation because he was sharing me that he's really getting into this class and he's wanting to read his Bible more. And I just, with the tragedy, I felt like I understood my Bible last year better than I ever had. Passages were becoming more clear to me than they ever had at any point in my life. And now this year, rereading some of those same passages, again, they're just like popping off the page as to what Jesus is saying to the crowds. And I was probably one of the people in the crowd for a long time that was there and I was listening, but I wasn't hearing. And now it's like, oh, okay, this is popping off the page. I'm hearing what you're saying, Lord. And yeah, so reading scripture is going to be incredibly important.
And just a simple reminder is to put the Bible somewhere where you see it every day. You leave yours by
right by my bed.
Right by your bed, but somewhere, where your morning coffee is at or whatever would remind you to pick that up. I keep my devotional by my laptop on my desk. So if I have a few free minutes, because I'm not a schedule person, so I forget. So just keeping it front and center so you notice it's a great idea.
I would say to somebody that's listening, that's like, I've never read my Bible. Where should I start? Pick it up and start in the New Testament and start reading about Jesus. Because most books, you're waiting to see how it ends. The answer is Christ. The answer to the Bible is Christ. The entire Old Testament is pointing towards him, but the Old Testament is really hard to read. And so if you were to start reading scripture and you start at the Old Testament, you might get some discouragement because that's hard. So I just recommend that you do it that way. Pick it up, New Testament. It's going to start with Matthew and read.
I know another way, people suggest this all the time. So I know it sounds so simple, but just journaling and doing like a daily gratitude. I mean, the simplest things you can be so grateful for.
I started doing it, and then it was like every day I'm so grateful for Angie, and I'm so grateful for what Angie did for me today.
Just write my name on every page.
And I was just like, it's just monotonous at this point. So
you can think of little things. Like I'm grateful today that you went and picked up the twins when they had an early out when I was on a call and I was worried about the weather, and grateful you went and picked up groceries. Grateful to have the kids here all weekend, and grateful it's Friday.
I'm grateful that I get to sleep in bed next to you tonight. I look forward to that.
Can you think of something you're grateful for that's not me?
I'm grateful that Carter had a great basketball game last night.
There you go.
Grateful that his car wasn't actually broken today. He just had a loose cable on the battery. We thought maybe we had that problem.
That's a good one.
So
grateful that's not costing money.
So yeah, you're right. I've got to work on those things.
Yeah. How you think is a magnet for how your day goes. So your thoughts attract
That's for sure.
everything. So they're like a magnet. Prioritizing sleep. Man,
I really want us to sleep tonight.
it makes a huge difference. I'm exhausted tonight because I traveled to Nashville for work and flight was delayed, didn't get home till 12:30 a.m. and then was up at 6-ish. And I can tell this afternoon, evening, I am tired and you're just not.
Just throwing it out there. What if we try to go to bed at 9:30 and we try not to get out of bed till 7:30? That'd be 10 hours. You and I never do that.
No, but I'm game.
It would be amazing if we could try to pull that off.
Maybe I'll double up on my magnesium tonight.
But you're right. You can tell throughout the day. You can tell in a lot of ways.
Well,
if
it's
you're
just
sleep
hard.
deprived.
Life's harder when you're tired. Your brain doesn't function the same. So you have to prioritize sleep. We've talked about prayer. That's another way to nourish your soul. Last week we talked about hugs.
Love a good hug.
I mean, that produces some major serotonin. So everyone feels good after a good hug. What?
Well, it's just funny because I like hugs a lot more than you do.
I know.
And so
tonight he tried to hug me and I didn't even know he was trying to hug me. So Summer walked in. I'm like giving Summer a hug and like must have.
Chase started dying laughing because he saw it like.
I mean, after the 6th hug for the day, I'm kind of like, okay. But he's a hugger.
As we discussed
toucher and a hugger.
when we first started dating, and we were very much like, let's talk about our love languages so that we had that understanding.
I didn't really know what
And
that
hers
entailed.
was, she liked thoughtfulness and like acts of service, like today, picking up kids, intentional.
I know.
And I have advanced myself in trying to meet those over the years because I see how
And
important
what
it
he's
is to her.
saying is that I have not.
I don't
That is
know
what
that
you're saying.
I'm not saying that. You can say whatever.
so funny.
I am just acknowledging that I am very much, I'm a touch is how I feel loved. And as she mentioned a moment ago, what if it's the 6th hug of the day? It's too many. I'm like, I'm just getting started over here. What are we talking about? Man.
I'm taking that one off the list.
You just said it's good serotonin,
Here's
woman.
a good one. To nourish your soul is to ask for forgiveness.
Oh, golly.
Will you forgive me that I've not met your love language?
Give you all the time.
I'll try to hug better.
Yeah, I love it. I'm all about it. I'm all about her hugs. I do. She was gone for a couple nights. And some people are like, when their significant other's gone, like, oh, I spread out.
Gone
I love
one
it.
night.
Anyway, I love people are like, oh, I love the entire bed to myself. Not me. I'm like, immediately it throws off my game. I prefer to sleep next to my wife. And yeah. So anywho.
Yeah.
And then one other one is something that you have really taught me over the years is a random act of kindness. That when you do things for the right reasons or for no reason at all, it always comes back around. Like it makes you feel good about yourself because you see the happiness that you've brought to someone else. And again, it's another serotonin boost when you are able to do something just randomly for somebody else and expecting nothing in return. That's how that works really well. So just some different tips on how you could nourish your soul. And I do highly recommend that. Angie is the one that really started teaching me to just try to be kinder in ways that people aren't expecting. And you do see like, it really does make a difference.
I can 1,000% attest to this. In the lowest of lows, still finding the strength to do something nice for somebody else. Oh my God. That's so helpful. It lifts up my soul and it makes me feel stronger that I can find the space, the energy, the intention to do something for somebody else. Try it. It helps. It helps.
And so I don't know, maybe pick like a couple of these. We just gave you several. Maybe pick like one or two and try to do them over the next week and see if there's any kind of like nourishment to your soul. And then let us know like on our social media what you picked and how it worked for you. Because I do think that it's going to help. And the more that we can nourish our souls, the happier we're going to find ourselves and hopefully finding some joy whenever that time comes for you. And I too have been trying to work on ways to find some joy in my life in 2024. And I'm hopeful that
I'm proud of you for doing that. I feel like whenever we met that you didn't allow yourself to focus on what brings you joy And it's taken you a couple years, I feel like.
4 years now that we've been here?
To be like, you know what, this is something like I would enjoy. So starting to help coach Dane's team, and hopefully can maybe sing at the crossing, checking that out. And so I just love to see that you're working on you and things that bring you joy instead of being afraid to do something that's good for your soul.
Well, let's just tie this back in to part of the bigger story. And God putting us through the disruption is that, unfortunately, without the disruption of losing Hallie, I probably don't push through into these things, because the coaching is like, well, we only have so much time with these kids, and I do enjoy it. And Dane didn't like it when I filled in one tournament last year, and the boys on the team liked it. And so it did bring me joy. And so in my mind, I only have maybe 1 or 2 more years I can do this. And then they're playing high school ball. So let me do something that I've always loved. And you know, you're in a place of healing right now where even when we're spending time together all the time, we're just kind of sitting there, right? It's not like we're out.
Yeah, and you need the social interaction. And it's a great way for you to find it.
And feel like I'm teaching young men. Yeah. And so that's that. And then the singing I've always wanted to do. And what I have learned over the last year is the happiest I have been in the last 14 months, or any time that I've been able to get together with other talented people and to sing and just really like wail and use my full voice the way I feel like God intended me to. And that has brought me real joy. And so I'm just exploring what that could look like in different ways to see if there's something there. So yeah. But again, it's trusting the full story, because unfortunately, now for the record, I would much rather have Hallie back and just be not explore those things, if I'm being honest, but that's where we're at. And so I'll push through and try to figure that out. But with all that being said, you did find a really good prayer that I think you can say over this episode to hopefully help people even more.
Yeah, as I've shared many times, my prayers are very short and they're begging and just please guide me, please help me. And then I cross paths with this one. I'm like, oh, I love the words of it. It totally resonated with me. So I'm going to share it with you, and maybe it resonates with you. God, in this moment of uncertainty and struggle, I reach out to you for strength and guidance. Grant me the wisdom to see the path ahead, the courage to face my challenges, and the resilience to rise above them. Help me to find peace amidst chaos and clarity in the midst of confusion. Let your love be my anchor and your hope my guiding light as I work to put myself back together with grace, patience, and determination. In Jesus Christ, amen. That's a solid prayer.
That's a solid prayer. That's a very good prayer. Keep that bookmarked somewhere. Yeah. Maybe post that to the Blended Blessed Always a Mess page. I really liked it. And I think you guys probably heard our dog Polly come down in the middle of it. She either really liked it or needs to go to the bathroom. I'm not sure.
I think she loved my prayer.
I'm sure she did love the prayer, but I think also she's also saying, hey guys, wrap it up. I'm done. All right.
I think our kids want us to wrap it up too.
Yeah, because we're like, everybody be quiet. And they're like, we've got friends to talk to. So with that being said, thank you guys for spending some time with us this week. We hope that you'll do one of the two of the things to nourish your soul just a little bit. And you could maybe pray back that we actually get some sleep, because that would be awesome. We would love that too. So have a wonderful week, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.